episode 4 of the Scenic route. It's been a bit of a journey, like a scenic route so far. I've had some amazing guests, and one today is amazing as well. We have Kurt Schweinberger. Very excited to hear his scenic route. Kurt, I guess the first question would be, what do you do?
What do I do? Gosh, what don't I do sometimes?
There we
I
go.
feel like I look after junior school performing arts. I'm a dad. I'm a performer. I'm a conductor.
In that order? Would you say in that order?
Yeah. I feel like I'm, as Rhonda Purvis would say, jack of all trades, master of none.
I don't know about that. I've heard you on the Ivory before, and it's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
We're very lucky, actually. Kurt is always the one that has to put his hand up when it's either a chapel service. You're one of the first faces we see when we begin our term, because you're up there ready to play.
Yeah.
Is it during those times it can be quite serious what you're playing because it's a hymn or it's something like that? Do you just want to get into like ragtime tunes and that kind of thing?
It's very funny. When the hymn, a previous chaplain, Greer, Doc Manovich, would always talk about choosing the hymns and things. And one hymn that she always plays is Come As You Are. And all I want to do is play the Nirvana version of Come As You Are. So when the day comes and they carry me out, that's the hymn I want. And instead of playing Come As You Are, That's How I Love You, I'm going to da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. So that's my thing. But I always, when I try to play, it's chapel, it's very serious, but this last chapel service, it was a hymn, and at the end it was Tiffany Farlow's birthday that day, so I did add a little happy birthday to it. So I try and make it as fun as possible.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you're very talented. I would love to have a talent like that as well, but sometimes we call it a talent. You've probably worked really, really hard on it.
Look, it's a lot of blood, sweat and tears, sitting at the piano or in the studio practicing singing or something. And it's one of those things where, like, I have 2 children and one of my daughters plays cello, and it's that slog of, okay, Zara, I need to do our practice. And I was exactly the same with my mum. She's like, okay, Kurt, go do practice. But it just comes to a point where you just do it and you enjoy it and you become addicted to it, and you just want to be better. And the thing is that you're performing and there's an audience and you're being criticised, and then you'll be in the paper the following Monday after a concert and the critic has written a review about you for a performance or a theatre experience, and you just don't want to be in that experience where the critic's written a bad review about you, because all of the Hunter, where I grew up in Newcastle and on the Hunter Valley, everyone reads it. Okay. So I'm like, yeah.
That's hard. That'd be a hard scenic route to go on. And
Absolutely.
Did you like that segue? We were looking at how hard it is to, become a performer and someone that plays in a live audience. It's one of those jobs as well, I feel, one of the only jobs that you get automatic feedback.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's been moments where there's a... and I've performed in a theatre and there's more people on stage than in the audience.
Yeah, wow.
And then there's been the flip side where, like, performing in front of thousands and thousands of people and it's just me solo on stage. And I almost find that more inviting than the more intimate stuff, because you can't see anyone. Whereas in those small theatres, the people are right there in front of your face, but in the big sort of open air theatres, you can't see anything. So it's like black. So.
Couldn't imagine it. I'm reading a book to my kids at the moment, and it's Wonder. And there's a quote in there that talks about everyone deserves at one time in their life a standing ovation.
Yeah.
You've had a few of those?
Oh, nothing beats a standing ovation, and it happened when I was in Paris, and we were singing. I was part of a music group, and we performed at Notre Dame Cathedral.
Was this your first standing ovation, or is this just one of many?
No, but this one would have to be the one that really had an impact, because we were a choir and we were performing in Notre Dame Cathedral. It was a big thing. We were the first Australian choir to ever be invited to go sing in Notre Dame. And everything was in French and I didn't speak French. A few people in the group could speak French, but at the end, everyone just stood, and the person said something. The chaplain said something in French, and we understood a little bit because he talked about Newcastle and things. And all of a sudden, these people just stood, and the entire Notre Dame Cathedral was full, and they just started applauding. And it was one of those moments where we were processing out of the cathedral, and I was leading the charge because I was the tallest. And so I was the first person feeling this standing ovation, and I still remember it as one of those moments where these people were just smiling at us and applauding and just soaked it up. It was amazing.
How many years ago do you reckon that would be?
So that was back in 2002. I was over in England.
That's over 20 years ago, and it's something that you still can feel and remember.
Absolutely.
Everyone needs definitely a standing ovation, it sounds like. Well, let's go back then. Let's go back. And the first question I ask is, what was your first job? And it doesn't have to be necessarily your paper round when you were 12, whether you have one or not. That was my very, very first job I can remember. But it can be your first job out of school. You can take it the way you want to take it.
So I think I was one of those kids that, growing up in Maitland, my mum had a walking group, and they thought, well, let's earn some money. And so they started delivering the junk mail.
As they went.
As they went around. And so they used to row bus kids in, and because Mum's walking group had all friends the same age as us, so we would walk around delivering the mail, the junk mail and things. And yeah, I enjoyed it, but it's one of those funny things that I distinctly remember it because I used to get chased by the magpies. I think this is where I developed a fear of magpies. So that was sort of my first job, but it scarred with this fear of magpies. And I remember, when I got my first paycheck and we divided it up, it was like $1. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I did that. And you know what? I stuck at it because back in the days, and I saved and saved and saved for like weeks and weeks, 2 years, enough money because my cousins were going to America to buy, and I said, would you buy me a pair of Converse shoes or Reeboks or something like that? And I still remember saving and putting my money and then handing my jar of money to my auntie and uncle who were going to America. And they just looked at me, shh. I said, I hope it's enough. And they sort of looked at me just going, oh, you meant to take this jar. I was only probably 8 or 9. Like I was still in primary school, and my first getting my pay in dollar, ding, 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 and handing it to my auntie and uncle who at the time lived in Canberra. We went down, visited them, and gave them the money. And
they're like, I'm not taking this. That's half my luggage.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so first, do you reckon through that walking group you had a bit of a stronger work ethic after that?
Do you know what I think? One thing I liked about it, one thing I learned from it was that it was social, and it was a real sort of sense of community. And so every job that I've had, I've always brought that sense of having a good chat and a good yarn. And my first real job where I had to pay tax and things was working at Bilo.
Okay.
And Bilo was the equivalent of Coles in Maitland. And my boss, I used to stack shelves, and I would always get in trouble talking to people through the aisles. And friends would stack the shelves, and I'd talk to the person on the other side. And this Jane, I still remember her face. She had red hair, and she was loud. Kurt, stop talking. And then they just got sick of it and sick of me, and so they put me in a section where I could talk to people. So they stuck me in the deli. And so I used to.
You need to be able to talk in the deli.
I'd have to sit and talk to people on the counter, and then I get in trouble for talking to people for too long, and then the other customers would be waiting. Because growing up in Maitland, you know everybody and everyone knows you. And yeah, I liked it. I liked that sense of community and sense of just having a good chat to people.
It's so clear you bring that to your team as well, so it's something you haven't lost.
Thank you.
That camaraderie as well, a bit of that, we're all in this together.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think we've gone from the delivering paper. Actually, I have a question. Did you ever deliver the paper that then had reviews in?
No.
This? Okay.
No, this was just the local junk mail, the Woolworths catalogue. Sometimes we'd have to deliver samples.
Yeah.
And I remember once Pert shampoo had just been released, and so we had to deliver these little sample shampoos to all the mail, and they were like, when you got like all of these Maitland you're delivering to, I was like, oh my gosh, these things are really heavy. You put them in the people's mailbox, and there was never enough. And so you only give them people that you liked.
Well, you keep some. I can see you still using the Pert. You got very bouncy hair today.
But no, I never delivered the actual newspapers. No,
Okay.
That was my friend Garth.
Oh,
he
Garth.
used to sit in the back of the van at the local newspaper shop because he'd roll the papers and then he'd throw them out the windows. Yeah, that was my friend Garth. He had made it. He was the one that made it. I was just.
What's
jumping
Garth
out.
doing now? Is he? He's on Broadway.
No, Garth is not on Broadway.
He's with Wayne. Anyway, no, too old a joke there. Okay, so you've gone from, I feel like we've gone paper round, buy low. Is there something next?
Look, while I always did that, I always taught piano.
Okay.
I started teaching piano.
You probably want to teach piano at the moment. You can make a lot of money an hour teaching piano.
If only I had the time. I think if I took on another job, Emma would just be like, Kurt, no more.
Okay, so
yeah, I taught piano. And growing up in a country town of Maitland, there wasn't that many piano teachers, and so I used to teach piano. I used to also accompany for a lot of instrumental teachers for the AMB exams and things, and also had a stint once playing for ballet exams. So that was interesting because there was a local ballet studio, and the classical girls, they had to have a live piano player. So I played piano for them. So that was a really interesting experience.
what age were you, because this sounds like it's taken off pretty quickly, but what age were you feeling confident enough to first of all teach piano but then accompany these people as well?
I was probably early uni, so
Okay.
my late teens.
Yeah.
When I started doing things like that. And lots of, once I finished school and went to uni, I really sort of got into performing in the theatre scene. And that's where I'd always grown up being a piano player, but I always had a love of singing and performing on stage. And I used to get booked for a lot of piano, like playing in orchestras, lots of repertorying for auditions and sorts of things like that. And then so that was sort of what I used to do a lot. I'd go to uni during the day and then I'd rehearse at night time. Then I'd go to uni during the day and then I'd rehearse at night time. So that was sort of my life for a good 4 years while I was at uni. But I loved it. It was just that being with people is very, very sociable, and those people became like some of my best friends that I've ever known. And whilst I'm in Sydney and they're like all around the world, and whenever we catch up, it's always like as if we've just seen each other.
So good. They're the best friends, aren't they?
Absolutely.
When that happens. So you're at uni, you're doing piano,
Yeah.
accompanying and ballet. That would have been interesting.
I
leotard?
was not dancing. I was just on the piano.
That's not what I've heard. That's not what I've heard. But we'll leave those stories for another time. That could be the bonus feature.
We'll not see it. No.
So you're at uni, and what are you doing at uni? We didn't talk about that.
So I studied piano.
Yeah.
That was my major.
Yeah.
And when I was at uni, I really that's when I started to sort of sing, and I'd sort of...
Like an Elton John, Billy Joel kind of thing?
No. I wish, no. Sort of
But
more,
that kind of style? No.
No.
I could see you doing that.
No. I'm more sort of like a theatre performer, like a musical.
Sinatra? No.
Oh, absolutely. If only. So mainly sort of musicals and performances, and that was sort of my background. I'm not a pop singer at all. I remember once when I was taking junior school band once, and we were doing a song in band, and I demonstrated, I said, okay, girls, it's this song. And this girl goes, Mr. Schweinberger, it's a pop song, not an opera song. You don't have to sound it like this. And I said, there was the biggest sledging in my entire life. And I went, oh, thank you, yes, I am not So, long story short, I'm not a pop singer by any means.
And she failed, so that's good.
Yeah.
We made sure. Okay, so you're doing piano.
Yeah, at Newcastle Uni.
In Newcastle Uni. First job out of uni.
First year out of uni, well, I always worked during uni. It's quite a funny thing. So, when I was at uni, and then I graduated, and I had one more subject to do, and a mate's mum worked at a disability centre, and it was quite a funny sort of change in sort of my scenic route, if you're sort of going through.
Yeah.
And I was at a party, the 21st or 18th party, it must be the sort of 21st, and they said, hey, look, I work at this disability centre, and they're after people who do music and performance to work with the disabled kids. Would you consider going for this job? And I went, oh yeah, why not? And so I ended up sort of working at this disability centre as a support worker and focusing on performing arts and music. And
Wow.
It was it was probably a real changing point, because their love of performing arts was just so unconditional, in that they just would just throw themselves into. There was no fear whatsoever. I said, would anyone like to sing? And this girl would pick up the microphone and she would just sing her heart out. In her head, she sounded like Celine Dion, and that's what I loved. It was just that sense of, I have no shame, I have no fear whatsoever. I'm just going to get up there and I'm just going to do it. And it's still one of those, I think, a real sort of, it was a real detour that I thought I was going to go on this career.
Where did you think you were heading then before you had
It was always the dream to be like an actor, a performer on stage.
Hugh Jackman, it sounds like a little bit.
Well, if only.
Sorry.
If only.
We keep going if only. You could have
If
just...
only. But that was the dream, that was sort of thing. And so I'd sort of done my undergrad, and I thought, oh, you know what? Okay, I've done my undergrad in performance. Now I'm going to sort of try and go for an acting school or something like that. And then this job came up. I said, oh, okay, I'm just going to park that to the side. And I went and did this job for 2 years. And after the first year, I auditioned for NIDA at the Institute of Arts.
Yeah.
And it was a real... I thought, oh, I just thought I'd throw my hat in the ring. And it was a day of auditions, and I went in and I sung my pieces, and then we had to do a dance audition, and I kept getting like through and
Australian Idol, like next round.
That's
next round.
exactly right. And people are getting cold, and I got through the end of the round to do my monologue and stuff, and they said, look, you're in the final rounds, we'll consider you, we'll call you next week. And then next week came, and sorry, but thank you, but no thank you. I was like, oh, bugger. They said, but come back again. And at that stage, I decided to move to Canberra, because I thought, you know what?
Maitland to Canberra.
Maitland to Canberra.
So it's like Hollywood to New York.
Yeah.
No?
Oh, gosh. And so I'd been at the disabled school, and I thought, you know what, that was a great sort of opportunity to really sort of learn. That's where I really sort of, if anything, the whole sort of differentiation movement hadn't really started in teaching and education, but that's where I feel like I really learnt my craft as a teacher, when you've got a really diverse group of disabled kids, some that are verbal, non-verbal, all sorts of things, and you're trying to engage them in something. You really have to keep the momentum going. And I was sort of in doing that for a couple of years, I think 2 years, and I was like, oh, you know what, I think I want to change. I want to get out of Maitland, and I just got knocked back from NIDA, and I was like, you know what, I think it's time to change. And within a matter of 2 weeks, I'd applied to go do the teaching degree at University of Canberra.
Is that when you could do it for a year?
Yeah, back in the days of a good old dip head.
I've had a couple of guests talk about this on the scenic route, and I think, I don't know, I feel like we need to look into it more and get it back, because I think you get so many people like yourself that have these amazing backgrounds, and they can do it within a year. Anyway, sorry.
I'll go on. But it's intense. It is like you're doing 4 subjects a semester.
Like a prac all
and
the
you're doing
time.
a prac, and you're also, I had to work, and I moved to Canberra, and it was just on a whim, and literally within 2 weeks I quit my job, moved to Canberra, and was doing this degree, and I just went, oh, you know what, okay, Canberra it is, and it was
It's not many people's move, is it, from Maitland to Canberra?
No, but my sister had lived in Canberra, and so I knew it. I had my cousin there.
The ones that bought you the Converse?
Yes, it was actually. It was.
And did they bring them back? Just because I know people will be on the edge of their seats going, did you get your Converse or your Reeboks?
I got Reeboks. My brother got Nikes. And because growing up in a small country town of Maitland, and we weren't a wealthy family by any means, but my brother and I worshipped these shoes, and we didn't wear them out. They were so like, I'm looking at your sort of...
Yeah, I'm a sneaker buff. I like my sneakers. So you were strutting Maitland after that. You were like, come on, have a look at these. Can only get them in the US or Sydney. No,
but do you remember the days where they had the pumps?
I had thongs. I had Reebok pumps.
Oh, man.
Pump thongs?
Like the oh no,
and the tongue.
The tongue. Thank you.
So that, actually, Reebok, if you're listening, pump thongs, that could be a thing.
Yes.
Anyway.
So I moved to Canberra, started uni, and I had my savings and...
In the jar still?
not in the jar. I'd progressed to a bank account by then. And I had to get a
You
job.
could open them in Maitland though?
There's a few, It is a nice little backwoods town, but hey, all good things come from Maitland.
Very much.
All roads lead to Maitland. All my life. People.
Or Canberra.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And so I moved to Canberra and had to get a job, and I'd come sort of from Newcastle and had to having like a big performance sort of background and things, and I just couldn't get a job. And I walked past Starbucks one day and I went, you know what? I'm just going to throw my hat in the ring because I need a job. And I don't drink coffee. I don't drink tea.
I offered actually during the podcast whether you wanted a coffee or tea. We've got water, but so I do offer liquids.
And bugger me dead, they offered me. They said, "Oh yeah, come in for an interview." And I said to the guy, he said, "Why do you want to work at Starbucks?" I said, "I'm going to be very honest with you. I need a job, and I just don't want to. I don't drink tea. I don't drink coffee, and all those things." And he went, "Oh, well, there's lots of other drinks, but we just need people to work." I was like, "Then I'm happy to work." And
you became king of Frappuccino.
Oh, Frappuccinos, absolutely. Grande, venti. But I got the job, and did I love it? No, I hated it.
Well, they went broke here, didn't they? I don't think they're slowly coming back again.
They're slowly coming back.
It's because their coffee's awful. But anyway, sorry.
I just didn't like it, and I don't know what it was about it. Like, because it was social, I was just chatting to people all day.
Were you making the coffees?
Yeah, making the coffees and that sort of thing. But I just, it just wasn't a nice culture. And I think there were some people there that just took it really seriously, and they were that real sort of coffee. I'm not going to say it because there's coffee people out there and they'll get offended.
I love coffee.
Yeah. Okay, we'll cut that part.
No, that's all right. No. We keep that bit in. But
no, please don't.
No one cares whether you're bagging coffee out. You don't have to like all liquids. You have a drink of your water now. H2O, yeah.
So I got the job at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Didn't love it, but it was just a way to pay the bills. And I did that for a year, and while I was doing my dip ed.
Yep.
And the plan was to always, the previous years I'd done the NIDA audition, and they said, come back. And so I thought, you know what, if I'm going to make this and be, as you said, the next Hugh Jackman, if only, I need to have a fallback career. And so I went and did my teaching degree for a year and did that, and the NIDA auditions came up again. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. And whilst I was doing my final uni placement and assignments, I went through the audition process. Same thing again, and kept going through final rounds, bang, they said, we'll call you. And I still remember the day that the lady called me, the convener of the course, and she said, look, Kurt, I'm sorry, but we're we're not putting you in again. But if someone pulls out, you are the first reserve.
Yeah,
And I was like, I was gutted.
Can I have the list of people just so I can have a friendly chat with them?
Well, the funny thing was that I said to a friend, hey, I'm auditioning for NIDA. Why don't you come and audition? Why don't you audition too? And you wouldn't believe it.
They got
in.
no list.
And
you went and crushed their kneecaps.
I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, but you know what? Like, that's what it is. And that's one of those moments where I didn't get in, but I got a targeted teaching position job in Canberra. And so my mum said, well, just stay in Canberra. And I was like, oh, I don't want to stay in Canberra. I want to move to Sydney and make this a career as an actor and things, Mum. And she's like, well, Kurt, it's not meant to be. And so I stayed in Canberra and got a targeted position at a really good school at Lynham. And that's where, and if I'd left, like, it would have been one of those sliding door moments. It really would have been the door to close, and I would have gone to Sydney and probably studied at NIDA. Then I'd be an unemployed actor somewhere. But stayed in Canberra, and that's where I actually met Emma, my wife. And
totally meant to be.
It was one of those really sliding door moments that was like, okay, right, bang, and yeah, then that's how life changed. And I got a job at a grade school at Lynham High School.
How long did you teach there for?
I taught for 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. And it was a great school. It was 7 to 10. It's high school. They have high school 7 to 10. And then they have college, which is 11 and 12. So I taught there for 2 years. And it was a really great experience because it was a band school and I hadn't really had, like, I'd done lots of conducting and things like that, but I hadn't really sunk my teeth into things like that. And I had a great head of department, this lady called Debbie Masling. And she was a real sort of institution of Canberra music education. She was like the face of Canberra music. Like the Sabina Turner or Karen Carey of Sydney. Debbie Masling was the person. She was my mentor when I was at uni because I did my prac there. And she said, Kurt, I would never have given you a job because you were just a piano player and a singer, but like I was able to work with you. And so when the recruitment rounds and those targeted positions, she said, I'll take Kurt.
Wow.
And she was a great mentor. She really was. She sort of got me in front of bands and orchestras and got me conducting. And so that was for 2 years. And after 2 years, Emma had wanted to leave Canberra because she was born and bred in Canberra. And she said, well, I'm moving to Sydney. And when we first met, she was like, letting you know, want to move to Sydney. But then she stayed and then a job came up for her to move. And so she moved and then we did the 6 months of travelling back and forth on the Murray's bus every Friday, Sunday afternoons.
Every week? Most.
Yeah, every second sort of week. Or she'd come down 1 week and I'd go up another week or something.
So very similar with my wife.
Really?
Yeah. But in Africa.
Oh, wow.
In Tanzania, on these dirt roads, we'd get the bus. Anyway, it's not my story. So.
No. So we'd catch the bus. And then I sort of was coming to the end of the second year and Emma said, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to move to Sydney? I said, I think I want to. And so I left my job in Canberra, left a permanent position, and they said, I'll just take a year without pay just in case things don't work out. I was like, oh, okay, rightio. And it was a really funny thing because I was very lucky. I got lots of interviews when I came to Sydney, but no one knew who I was. It was this boy from Canberra.
Yeah.
And like my first interview was at Shaw, then I had one at Knox and school at a Riverview, like all these schools, and I just wasn't getting a job. And I was like, what's going on? And then I had literally found out that year in 2007, 2008, it was like a shift of all these music teachers, and I didn't get anything. People were just moving from one school to the other. And then at the end of the last day of school, I did an interview at MLC Burwood, and there was this lady, Karen Carey, and Karen Carey is there's this film called Mrs. Carey's Concert.
That's it. Yeah.
So yes, Karen, she's like infamous in music education. She interviewed me, and the first interview was with her, and then she says, I like you. I'm going to bring you back next week and I want you to meet the principal. And I was like, oh, okay, right. I want you to teach a class, and yep, right, cool. So I was like, okay, that's what I'm doing next week. So I came back and did a second interview, had to teach a class. And the funny thing was, I think that interview had that class I taught was Ellen Buckley in the junior school. She would have been in that year group at that time as a young year 6 girl. So
now you're her boss.
How the tides have turned. So then I interviewed, and it was for a 1-year position, and they gave it to someone else, and they gave it to the person who was already teaching there. And Karen Carey said, Kurt, if it was a permanent position, I would have time to work with you, but with just 1 year, I wanted someone who can go. And that was a real sort of moment where I went, oh wow, like I'm nearly there. I'm going to get something. And then I interviewed a job at Knox, and they weren't sure how many hours and things they wanted there. But then the permanent position here at Pymble came up, and it was my birthday, and I got the call to say, would you like to come in for an interview? I was out at lunch with friends, and I said, absolutely. And it was that moment I hung up the phone, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this PLC Sydney or PLC or Pymble?
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was one of those moments on the day, I was like, which school am I going to? And I had to go back to that because I could have quite easily gone to PLC.
They're not
Sydney.
close.
They're not close whatsoever. And it was one of those moments because in the interview, the lady said, oh, I'm so glad you're here because the other person went to PLC Sydney. And I was
That does happen apparently quite often.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I came to the right school. And so, yeah, I interviewed with Sabina and Vicky Waters, the principal, and walked out and was off to another interview at another school for a permanent position. And literally an hour later, Vicky's EA, a lady called Amelia, called me to say, we'd like to offer you the job. And I took a double take. I was like, is this for the Pymble job? And she's like, yes, it's Pymble Ladies College quality. So within that moment, it was like a flick of a switch. It was bang. And I had gone from having sort of some work at Knox to a permanent position. Yeah. And I was like, how are they giving this job to me? They haven't called any of my references. They don't know who I am whatsoever. And so started the job at Pymble, and then I was on my first excursion to the Meet the Music series. And down the Opera House stairs, this lady, Karen Carey, who I'd interviewed for at MLC. I was sitting there, and I didn't know the music scene in Sydney of music educators. That's just small. Everyone knows each other.
You do now, I'm sure.
I do now, very much so.
You're leading it. You're like the Tony Soprano of the...
And I was sitting there having dinner before the concert, and down walks Karen Carey. And I was like, oh, Karen, hi, Kurt. She's like, oh, hi, Kurt, how are you? We're chatting away, blah, blah, blah. And naively, I turned to her, I said, oh, everyone, this is Karen Carey. And Sabina Turner at the time goes, yes, Kurt, I know Karen Carey. And everyone's like, yeah, we know Karen Carey, Kurt. And Karen left. I said, well, how do you all know Karen Carey? And Sabina goes, well, Karen Carey is the reason you got the job at Pymble.
There you go.
And I had no idea that when I'd interviewed at MLC and didn't get it, Sabina then called Karen to say, who's out there? Who are the people that I need to get into Pymble? And Karen Carey said to Sabina, you need to look out for this boy, Kurt. I didn't give him the job, but I would have. And Sabina Turner said to Vicky at the time, she said, Vicky, he's good enough for Karen Carey, he's good enough for Pymble. And that's how it sort of just bang came around really, really quickly. And 17 years later, I'm still here. And
it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you could have reacted when you didn't get the job like, oh, this is rubbish, blah, blah, blah. But it says something about being a nice guy or a nice person as well, that you treat people, with care and respect all the time. Yeah. Because then it gets out there, and people then recommend, and you're where you are now. How many years did you say?
17 years.
17 years. Okay. So now, you talked about the standing ovation in Notre Dame, or Notre Dame. Yeah. Notre Dame, sorry, went the American way. I've just been watching Rudy. Anyway, that's a football movie about Notre Dame in America. Anyway, let's go. Notre Dame. When was that? When did that take place?
So that was 2002. I was at uni.
So
And that was another sliding door moment where I was part of this group and I didn't know many people in it, and it was a little sort of cliquey, and I sort of auditioned. My singing teacher at the time, he said, I think you should audition for this group, Kurt. I said, oh, Chris, I don't know, like, they're like hardcore singers. He said, no, I think you should do it. Like, I think it'd be good for you. And so I said, okay, auditioned, and I got in. And that was a really surreal experience because it was like this music group, and we were a group of singers, and we were off singing every weekend, toured around Australia, and it was a really interesting experience. And then we got invited to come to the UK to perform, and it was in 2002, I think, or 2001. It was the year the Queen Mother died, and we were literally, the day before we left, the Queen Mother had died. And we were going to Westminster Abbey to sing, and we sang at Westminster Abbey the day before the Queen Mother's funeral. So we were in, and London was just, there was people everywhere, and there were lines.
Flags everywhere.
It was a really, it's a terrible thing to say, but it's a really exciting time to be in London.
Yeah.
And so,
they know how to put on a party, but that's probably not the word.
Yeah, like it was a real celebration of this person's life, and we sang at Westminster Abbey 2 days before the funeral, and then the day before. So we did a few performances at Westminster, what they call evensong, and the day before we sang at the funeral, and within a matter of one day they had decked the Abbey like with cameras and flowers and everything, and then we were singing there that night, and it was a really big moment because they said, look, the Queen may be coming to evensong this night, and you might be singing for the Queen. And then she didn't end up coming, but it was amazing. I was still like, wow, it was one of those moments, you always remember where you were when something happened. And I just remember being in London when the Queen Mother died, and just the people and that experience of singing there. So then we were over in the UK for I think it was like a month or 2 or 6 weeks, and we were performing at Westminster Abbey, St Paul's Cathedral.
These are some pretty big venues.
It was big, and then we did a week broadcasting on the BBC radio of a radio show and singing things and all sorts of things, and it was surreal. But one of the moments in how you end up in these situations you don't know. But when we were there, Jeffrey Archer, his wife Mary Archer, I think her name was, or name is, she was the president of some guild of musicians or something, and we'd just done a concert in Temple Church, and you'll know Temple Church from Dan Brown's the Da Vinci,
okay.
In that church in there. Yeah. And so it was a beautiful sort of church, and we then got invited back to her penthouse apartment over the Thames. And I was...
Hang on, is this adults only, or are we still going right?
And so this music group that I was part of, we went to her house, and I was at Jeffrey Archer's house, the novelist, and I think he wasn't there. I think he was in jail at the time.
I feel like it would be a castle. It was like you live in a castle.
It was on the Thames, and you looked out she was in the penthouse of this apartment, and there was Big Ben, and it was in the Houses of Parliament, and it was a really amazing moment. And I was like, how did a boy from Maitland end up
Maitland, Canberra, Jeffrey Archer's house?
This is pre-Canberra. This is pre-Canberra. But how did the boy from the country end up in Mary Archer's, Lady Mary Archer's penthouse apartment? And we did an impromptu concert in her place, and
that's great. So you performed St Paul's, you said, Westminster, Notre Dame. I'm going to get that wrong now because I've got the other one in my head. What other places? What other... Opera House, I would say.
Yeah, I did the Opera House. That was for the centenary concert.
Okay.
And that was a real surreal moment, because I remember waiting backstage, and I was going on to conduct Defy Gravity with the orchestra and the ex-students. I remember standing there going, wow, I wonder who stood here before me. And 2 weeks before that, I'd just been to see one of my favourite singers perform at the Opera House, I was like, oh my gosh,
Right
this
there.
person has stood exactly where I am, and then now I'm standing there. And all of a sudden, please welcome to the stage to conduct Defying Gravity, Mr. Kurt Schweinberger, and walked down the stage, on the Opera House stage, and literally slipped and nearly stacked it, walking out in front of the for the centenary concert, but caught my step and walked up to the podium and conducted. And that was a big moment.
Rumour has it was because you were wearing your Reebok pumps.
If
And that's
only
why
I
you
was wearing my
slipped.
Reebok pumps, a bit of sort of grip on the stage would have been good. But yeah, the Opera House stage was a big sort of place. Yeah, one, do you know, as part of this grouping at uni, it wasn't sometimes the most biggest venues or the most famous venues. It was just these towns and places around New South Wales and Queensland we'd go and perform in, and the people would just come and listen to us. It really it wasn't so much about the venue, it was about the community and the people coming, and these herds of people would come from these towns. They'd all go to the pub for dinner, and then they come to the concert.
And they're schnitty and
absolutely,
and a schooner.
Yeah, absolutely.
And go see Kurt.
Yeah, well, it
in
wasn't
his
just
Reebok
me.
pumps.
But yeah, that was that time of touring with that choir. It was a real sort of big turning point as a musician, and I think when my singing teacher Chris at the time said, "I think you should go do this. I think it'd be good for you as a vocalist," like it really taught me like choral technique and all sorts of things that I didn't expect to be a part of this group, because they were I was a piano player at uni, and so they let me into the inner clique of the singers, and so I felt like I'd made it.
Nice.
So yeah.
Now, another way you've made it, and definitely made it at Pymble, some of the amazing musicals that you've put on.
Yeah.
You want to give us a few of the names? I know you've done Willy Wonka recently.
Yeah.
And Seussical,
The musical.
There are a couple I know just recent, but what have been some other classics? Or have you had any like Mr. G creating one like the Bananarama Tsunami movie?
No, I'm not into creating
musical?
things. That's a funny thing, because that was one of those moments where it was another sort of sliding door moment, and I think I'd done Sabina Turner. She said, "Oh, Kurt, will you musical direct?" It was back in 2009, and the show was Thoroughly Modern Millie. And I said, "Oh yeah, I'll
What one?
Thoroughly Modern Millie."
I don't know that one.
It's about a girl that comes from New York. It's in the 1920s. It's sort of that roaring sort of 20s flapper dresses and stuff.
Goes to Maitland, New York to Maitland? No, sorry.
Country. I forget where. Anyway, she comes to New York, and it's the whole story. And so I had musical directed it, conducted, done, dusted, and then Sabina said, a few years later, planning for the next musical every 2 years, she said, "Oh, I've got to find a director." And I said, "Oh, you know what, Sabina? I've had been on stage and performed, and I wouldn't mind throwing my hand up to be director." And she said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I've sat on the stage, or as acting in different characters, or in the orchestra pit, and I've directed the show in my head."
Yeah.
And I said to her, "I'd like to give it a go." And she said, "Okay." And so she said, "Think about the show." And
You get to choose. That's great too.
Yeah.
What did you choose?
I
Here we
chose
go.
Beauty and the Beast.
Ooh.
Yeah, I chose Beauty and the Beast, and that was in 2011, and jumped to 2024 and 20 productions since.
If you go to Kurt's office, you'll see some of the posters up. Do you have them all up?
Not all of them, just the sort of the big ones. The ones.
What are some? Give us some.
I think
Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast. That was because that was my first, and I look at the Beauty and the Beast because that was my first, and then we did Chicago, and that was quite risky because it was sort of quite sort of
fishnets and
quite grown up material. And then after that we did Hairspray. I really enjoyed Hairspray. It was just a fun show. And then after that we did. Oh, that's right. We wanted to do Mary Poppins, and we have to apply for the rights, and we got knocked back. I was like, oh my gosh. And so...
Too many schools doing it or something? Because it feels like someone's doing it again now. It does come up all the time, doesn't it?
And another school down the road was they got the rights to it, we found out. And they didn't even fly Mary. They just did this green screen.
They didn't even fly it. We would have had her on a road flying in.
Well, that's the thing. So we did Legally Blonde, and that was a show that I hated.
There's not many flying actions in Legally Blonde.
And so we did Legally Blonde, but I grew to really like it, and it was like a rock concert. And then the following year, we did, we got the rights to do Mary Poppins, and we flew Mary through the GMCPA stage.
No way.
It was phenomenal. It was the risk and compliance to do that was just phenomenal. So yeah, we did that, and we did Fame and Mamma Mia, and lots of sort of small shows in between. Like we created a review with us, and we invited a lady, Rachel Beck, who is like a TV person.
Yeah, I've heard of her.
Yeah, she was on Hey Dad.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and so
you didn't ask for the Nudge to come?
No, I didn't ask for Nudge. But we
actually definitely don't want Dad to come.
No. And so she came and did this performance and workshop with the girls, and out of all the experiences, like I met some amazing musicians like Rachel Beck, another lady called Elise McCann who just finished Mamma Mia and Groundhog Day, and a parent who by the name of Guy Noble, who's a well-known conductor.
Yeah.
And the idea and all these different people, like I was doing these shows and meeting these people, and that one conversation with Sabina out the front of the music building when she said, "Oh, we need to think about the next show," and I'm saying, "Oh yeah, I'll direct it for you," like has been a real sort of one of those moments where it's just a huge detour, an opportunity that I never thought would happen, and probably has played a really significant part in, I guess, my career here at Pinball and what people who people know me as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had so many hits there with the musicals that you've directed? Have you had anyone throughout your career in the audience that you've been a bit nervous about, or anyone that you'd go, "That was pretty cool having them in the audience as I was about to perform"?
Do you mean people coming to watch?
Yeah, people coming to watch.
Do you know what? I think the first time my kids came to watch something.
There you go, great answer.
Yeah. The first time, and at the time it was Eva, when Sarah was a bit young, but when they came to watch Mary Poppins and when they watched her fly across the stage, that magic of, wow, it's like she's flying, Dad. I said, well, she is, that's what we want to. And yeah, that was just the joy on their face to go, oh my gosh, she's flying.
Dad did that.
Dad did that.
Dad made her fly.
Yes, Dad made her fly.
That's an awesome moment.
Yeah.
And anything else you're thinking of? We don't probably have another 5 hours, which you could probably talk about your time at Pinball. But is there anything else you'd go, that was another highlight or a change in career, that kind of thing here?
Back in 2016, we did the Centenary musical.
Okay.
With the junior school, and that was K to 6, and that was 800 kids. That was a huge undertaking, getting those kids on the stage. That taught me preparation, planning. You can't wing it with 200 when you've got a whole year group on stage and you're like, okay, what are we going to do? With the senior girls, you can sort of workshop things, but I learned with the junior school, bang, this is what I'm going to do. And you had to be organised. But the thing I learned, someone said, oh, now when you go to junior school, you have to treat them like kids, they're different, the seniors. But I just taught them like how I direct the senior school girls, and they rise to that occasion.
Absolutely.
And I look at when we did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory this year, I was pretty proud of that because it was something that the kids created. It was created with the kids, not for the kids. And it just felt like a big play school episode, and the kids were there was kids running everywhere, and
so
they created. And that's what I wanted. I just wanted it to be fun. I said to Kate Brown, I want to do this, but Kate, I don't want it to have pinball polish. I don't want it to be all flashy. I want it to feel like people walk into the John Reed Hall, and it's like they stepped onto the set of Play School, and it's authentic. It's what the kids. It's got to feel like it's created by the kids.
Love that.
Yeah. So yeah, I really enjoyed Charlie, and that's one thing. I wasn't meant to direct that.
Okay.
Nor was I meant to direct the Addams Family this year.
Yeah.
But with 2 staff members, both the people who were meant to direct left. And they sort of then turned left and said, "Oh, Kurt, would you do it?" And I was meant to take on like a more of a producer role and teach the singing side of things for the Addams Family. I said, "Oh, look, I'll do it." So I really enjoyed Charlie.
You're the main man, and when it comes to the directing now, it sounds so like.
Look, I enjoy it. It's exciting to create something and
see it
all come together. There's nothing more when you sort of layer it. You sort of cast the show, and then you direct the show, and then you're adding all the different elements of costume, lighting, sound, and putting it into the theatre, and then you add the set, and then when you add the last element of the audience and then applause, like, it's really exciting. And I always say to the cast, you've got to think about, like, it's really exciting to be in that audience and sit, and the curtain opens and people don't know what's going to happen.
No.
Like, that's the really exciting thing, and that's why I really try to get to the kids.
You take them on a journey, aren't you, for the hour, 2 hours? And this year you did the full Broadway with them as well.
The year 6, yeah. And that was, and that was great. And you give the kids a challenge and they'll rise to it. They'll really sort of take that opportunity to go, yep, we're going to do this. We're going to perform in this musical, which is for grown-ups.
Yeah.
And I'm 10 and 12 years old, and I'm just going to take the bull by the horns and go there. And they did.
They did so well.
Yeah.
I brought some of the residents of North Haven to come the aged care home up the road, and they were so annoyed because they could only stay for the first half.
Right.
Really wanted to come back.
Yeah.
And I've said if they come again, or if they're allowed to come again,
Yeah.
they are not allowed to leave.
Wow.
Till the end, which is pretty impressive when it's a 2-hour musical. It's been quite the journey. Kurt.
Yeah,
Thank you for taking
absolutely.
us on there. Have you got anything planned coming up that you can think
Really.
of? Or?
A holiday?
A holiday.
Well, I'm going to Spain and Portugal.
That's right.
Music
Yeah,
tour.
with the music tour.
So
I don't think I'd call that a holiday, Kurt.
No.
I don't know if you've done one before. It's fun.
Oh no, I have done lots of music tours. I've done like 5. Yeah, it's yeah. But no, look, it has been a bit of a whirlwind journey here at Pymble. I've been music teacher and then going to student coordinator in the senior school, and then going back into music and having a few roles in music, and then going to the junior school. It has been like just always changing and things, and I've been very lucky to have lots of different positions and opportunities to build as a teacher but as a performer as well. And
Absolutely.
I reflect on a great mate of mine who was who used to perform professionally, and
Not the one that got the NIDO?
no,
Sorry, I won't go back to that.
That's okay. We don't talk about that.
That's me. Yeah.
But he said to me one day, he said, "Kurt, like, you've got the best gig because you've got a full-time job. You're not chasing the next gig and things, and you've got a great theatre and things, and you do great performances. So why would you want to leave and stuff?" So I sort of just stayed. And
We always, anytime we see you on campus, you're always smiling. You always want to have a giggle, a chat, a laugh, which is great and definitely needed at schools, I think, as well.
Absolutely.
The final question I'm going to ask you, and this could be the hardest question for you, and it could be the hardest question for any guest that I've asked with all your music. The question is, if you could choose one song, I'll actually let you choose an album as well if you want, but if you could choose one song for your Scenic Route soundtrack, what would it be?
Oh dear. Because it's funny, I don't listen to a lot of music.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
like
you make your own.
Well, I just maybe because I listen to it so much at school and things, and but there's one. I remember one day listening to this song by Cy Coleman, and Cy Coleman is one of those composers from that Broadway era, and he wrote a great song called "It's Not Where You Start, It's Where You Finish," and the message is about that journey, and not always sort of starting at the top, because if you start at the top, I think the lyrics, if you start at the top, you're sure to drop or something. Nobody, give me a slow beginner, easy does it. And it's a really good song. And it talks more about the journey that one takes to get somewhere. And the growth and all sorts of things. So I remember hearing it one day, a lady, Barbara Cook, sang it. And I was like walking down, I don't know where I was. No, I was in Sydney. I had my mini disc player.
Oh, yes.
Back in the days of a mini disc player.
They didn't last long, but they were great. I had one as well. I won one, but anyway.
I've still got it. And then I listened to this album, and someone had given me a disc. I'll have a listen to some songs. I was like, wow, this is, I loved it. And the lines, if you start at the top, you're certain to drop. You've got to start to watch your timing. Better begin by climbing up ladder. Then there's one line that, just let me find it.
I knew it'd be a good answer.
It's not where you start, it's where you finish. It's not how you go, it's how you land. 100 to 1 shot, they'll call you a klutz. Can't outrun the favourite, all you need is the guts. Your final return will not diminish, and you can be the cream of the crop. It's not where you start, it's where you finish, and you're going to finish on top.
The only disappointing part, you didn't sing the last verse.
No, no.
You felt like it, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's a bit early. It's Monday morning, a bit early.
A bit early for that. But it's. I feel like it sums up my life a little bit because, and as my mum said, things happen for a reason. Like you don't want to start at the top because you've got nowhere to go. And I feel like I sort of had that gradual sort of climb. I'm still climbing. Whatever that might be.
That was a perfect answer. Yeah. I love it. I knew we were going to get a good answer from you there for that last one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Scenic Route. It's been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Bye.
It's not where you start, it's where you finish. It's not how you go, it's how you land. 100 to 1 shot, they call him a klutz. Can outrun the favorite, all he needs is the guts. Your final return will not diminish, and you can be the cream of the crop. It's not where you start, it's where you finish.